once you move from 2 to 3, logistically it gets harder because you need a bigger car, and just generally it gets a lot busier because they outnumber you, right?
Right. Well, I've heard, as we say here, in football terms, once you go from 2, you go from playing man coverage to all of a sudden 3. Now you got to play zone defense, right? When it's
Right.
one on one,
Yeah.
or wait a second, now we got to figure out how to take 2 at a time, or whatever the case may be. But
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. And I was just went to Australia last weekend for my nephew's wedding, and I was talking to my niece's husband, and they've got 3 kids now, and he was just exhausted, and I was just sort of saying, I've been there. I know exactly what you've been through. And my big advice to you is to take naps anywhere you can possibly have naps.
I wish I would have heard that one earlier. I could have used one last night. Between all the travel with the family, travel for myself, and then coming home, and we have some sick kids right now. So
Oh, sick kids are awful, aren't they? That's just the worst.
yeah, instead of messing around and doing hobbies yesterday while my kids were sleeping, I should have probably laid down and taken a nap too.
Your internet, you're sort of freezing a bit there. Are you okay there? What sort of internet connection have you got there?
Uh, it, you're actually freezing on me now a little bit.
Ah,
It
interesting.
looked good
Okay,
for a
that's okay.
second. I don't know.
We'll kick off anyway, I think. Okay. All right. Okay. So, Chris, thanks for joining us. And how are you today?
Of, of course, I'm doing pretty good. How are you guys?
Pretty good at this.
We're
I'm from the future because it is tomorrow for you. And my prediction for you is that you will have a good night's sleep for today. Yeah. Uh,
fantastic. I'm
so
looking
you're
forward to that
president.
one.
Yeah. And so you're president at Comploy HR. And why don't you tell me a bit about Comploy HR and what you folks do there?
Sure. So, we really focus on helping businesses to support their back office. Any of the back office needs that they have, as long as they've got a few employees. So we do everything from employee onboarding to payroll, HR, benefits, insurance, and guaranteeing compliance for businesses. One of the things that I found is most entrepreneurs, they got started very early on in their career because they had a passion or a goal that they were trying to achieve, whether it's helping their clients or making a sustainable income for their family for generations. But what they didn't think about, or what they don't all know, is how to run a compliant business and how to really be successful and protect their needs and their interests. So we help with all of that.
Right. Oh, fantastic. So today we're going to talk about the ERTC, which is the Employee Retention Tax Credit. So can you give me a rundown of what that actually is?
Sure. The Employee Retention Tax Credit is a fantastic tool right now that's being offered by the federal government, or by the IRS here. Through the pandemic, a lot of small businesses were dramatically impacted by loss of revenues, or supply chain disruptions, or, to keep employees so that way they had income throughout the pandemic. We had to guarantee payroll at different times, right? So this is the
Mm.
IRS's way of giving back and helping those employers that maintained their employees throughout the pandemic. So it's a tax credit, a federal tax credit that's up to $26,000 per employee that they were able to retain throughout the time frame. A lot of qualifications, a lot of different moving targets. I mean, as it is the IRS, but we're excited by it, as it's a fantastic tool.
So is it true that some schools have been told that they don't qualify, but perhaps they do?
It is. Unfortunately, we've talked to a lot of people, but it's understandable. These tax credits change. You have to have a healthy understanding of what the credit involves and how to qualify. And some people, unfortunately, were maybe misguided, or they spoke to somebody who didn't have all of the information. It's not that they were
Mm.
trying to misinform them, but they just didn't have the information necessary to determine real qualifications for them. when
Yeah,
you're
and I
working on
think,
something like this, you go ahead.
and I know in our case, I mean, you've helped us in respect to that. One of the things I found really helpful from your team is that your team sort of walks you through essentially whether you qualify or not qualify. And so I thought that was really helpful from our perspective anyway, because it is a bit of a minefield of what you have to do. And, you guys are the expert, and I know that you've processed, hundreds of these already, haven't you?
We have, yeah, and thank you for that compliment. I got to give credit to Danny Bates on our team. She really sat down with some of our clients to make sure that she understood their they needed to have that level of comfort. And so we're very excited to be able to share our process and help clients walk through and understand, why we're asking each of the different questions and what the process is really detailed out for them. So thank you for that feedback. Will go a long ways for them.
So, so, so what happens if you don't file before year end? Is the ERTC filing still possible? And if so, what's involved?
So as of right now, we are very hopeful that the ERTC credit will continue through the end of the year. The CARES Act, which is houses the employee retention tax credit, is set to expire at the end of this year, which means that legislation could come in and do what they want with it.
Right.
Because it's based on tax returns, right, for the 941 payroll taxes.
Yeah.
That will allow people to amend those returns through next year. But with legislation, we never really know what's going to happen. So, we're saying, hey, I think that we're going to be able to do these through part of next year, but just in case, because we do have some votes coming up, let's make sure to get these in and really start working away on these, quickly. It does take a lot of time to get these processed if we're doing them right. I mean, it is, 6 to 10 weeks for most clients to get processed and filed. So we want to make sure we don't lose out.
So the reality is, as we, because the end of the year is coming up pretty quickly, then people really need to contact you as soon as possible, really. And even if it doesn't get processed by the end of the year, it's not the end of the world. Potentially, you still be able to organize it even in the early first quarter, potentially.
Absolutely. I think that, as long as we start working on these between now and year end and through first quarter, I think that most of the people are going to be safe. I think really where it's going to come into question is going to be what happens next year after first quarter. But for right now, yeah, it is one of those things where we do want to start the conversations now with the amount of time it takes to process.
So, just broadly, the mechanics of what needs to be done to get this in place. What do you need to do? If I say today, yep, I want to go ahead and do it, what do I essentially need to what needs to happen?
Sure. A client could expect, that there's going to be some questions up front, right? For any outfit, anybody who's working with people to help process the ERTC credit, due diligence up front is needed. We have to take into account any PPP loans that were given, right? We need to make sure that we have all of the documentation for those along with any loan forgiveness. The other thing is we really need to take into account all the payroll and the paid time off wages that were paid, any benefits that were given during the time frame. We have to walk through a series of questionnaires. Generally speaking, we like to tell clients it's probably going to be a solid 2.5 hour process up front for the client while we walk you through that questionnaire, gather that information. After that, we take care of everything on the back end and we'll come back with questions, but we're going to make sure that you have updates along the way. 10 weeks could be a long time for a client to wait if we're not providing constant updates. So we do like to let everybody know and make sure they're informed throughout the process where we're at. But yeah, it's a little bit of a client lift up front, but that's the only way that we can guarantee the returns at the end.
So the obvious question is like, how much does it cost me, and how does it work? What's the sort of financials behind this?
Sure. For us to process these, we take a percentage fee up front, or sorry, not up front, on the backside. So we are only contingency based, meaning that we sit beside you, wait alongside you, and we don't get anything unless you get a check from the IRS. So for us to take a review, to look at it, to do all of the work, all of the calculations and qualifications, there's no cost associated with that. It's only if we sign on the 941 for you to take that liability on the audit. At
Yeah.
that point, once we sign and we file, then we wait alongside you, and then we're purely a contingency based fee.
And I think that was one of the, obviously, I'm sort of an accountant by background, and sort of low risk sort of guy, and I know he says, because you could tell by looking at me, and because I'm kind of geeky and Asian sort of thing like that, the stereotypical
No, we just
accountant.
had the conversation a few times.
Oh yeah, right. But interesting enough, and here's a fun fact, that it is International Accounting Day tomorrow. So, there'll be all these accountants out there sort of celebrating with their calculators out there. So if you see that, you will know why anyway. But anywho, what I thought was really good when we were talking about it was what you offer is obviously the contingent basis, but also I think you offer this sort of insurance that you have, that if there's some sort of clawback later on, there's some that you honor, basically, of honoring that. Can you explain that a bit more to me, to the listeners anyway?
Yeah, so we've got a couple of guarantees around the ERC or the ERTC. A lot of people shorten it up to just ERC. The first one is we guarantee the audit, right? So we've got audit protection. So as we walk through and we qualify anybody for these credits, we're putting together, on average, about a 25-page PDF that ties every single credit, every single calculation back to a part of the IRC or the Internal Revenue Code. So that's helping to substantiate our work. Then from there, if anybody were to ever go under audit, because we signed that 941, Comploy's not going anywhere. We do too many other things besides just focus on ERC. We're going to stand with you in regards to an IRS audit. After that, we also insure all of our and provide guarantee around all of our ERC findings and our services. So we carry an insurance on the back end to cover any losses associated with it, whether it's recalling of the funds, whether it is any type of penalties or interest, or anything that the IRS found was caused by errors in our work. So we've got a reinsurance policy on the backside that insures everything. So if you get that check, it's good. It's as good as gold.
Yeah, I think that's again fantastic, isn't it? Because it just gives you. I mean, there's only really upside in doing this, isn't there? And the question is, why wouldn't you do it? At least investigate it. And I suppose one of the great things, just talking to you, Chris, is that because you've had experience in doing it, it's not. Whereas if you tried to get your accountant to do it, they may not have experience, and their natural thing they'll charge you on an hourly basis as well. So I think it's something definitely for the listeners out there to just at least explore it anyway, and have a talk to Chris and his team in respect to that.
Well, thank you.
So just pivoting from ERTC now, just the final things that we want to talk about is what do you see is the big issue for early education at the moment?
I think there's a couple of key things right now. One of those is going to be hiring and employee retention, right? The staffing market in today's economy is just challenging. Trying to make sure you're finding a balance between wages that you're paying your employees, the benefits that you're paying them, the training or the promotional opportunity. You need to retain them and you need to attract them. Employee churn is always a very challenging one. The second one is going to be things like licensing compliance, right? How can we create compliance around licensing for ECE? There's the state that comes in and does checks on you. What are you doing yourself to make sure that you're compliant? Do you have checklists in place? Do you have a procedure and a process in place? Do you have all of your insurance in place? Right. And then how are you keeping track of everything that you would need in the event of a compliance audit, right? Where's your checklist? Where's everything that you need to have? So those, I think, are the two biggest challenges that we're seeing right now.
So just from your own company, your observations, it's not only about money, is it, that people want to stay with you or join you? Are there other sort of things that you've noticed from your observations that help retain and keep staff?
Yeah, I think that through some of the programs that we've worked with, and as our HR team is really working with them, we've learned a lot. One of the biggest things that I've found is just creating an employee recognition program. It doesn't have to be
Yeah.
some exorbitant bump in pay or some exorbitant bump in benefits. Understand what's driving your employees to be happy. What are their goals?
Mm.
I heard a story the other day about uh, uh, an owner of a center that talked to one of their staff members, and they said, "I want to learn to play the guitar." And
Mm.
so they were able to just go ahead and say, "Hey, listen, let's create a performance plan, put it in place, and if you do this, I'll get you a guitar lesson." Guitar lesson costs them $100 for a couple hours, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
now that employee is like, they feel heard, they feel connected to, they got something that's obtainable, and now they're able to go continue on this dream that they had. I mean, it's going to be something
That,
they're
oh,
going to
that's
remember forever.
That's a great example. I wish I could learn how to play the guitar. I'm sort of tone deaf, but
Um,
maybe on the next podcast you could hear me play. That would really drive away the listeners. But I
I
think
got
I
the
think one of
voice
the
and the
things that you
hat, but
really
I can't play guitar at all.
you can't play the guitar either.
No, no, I can't either.
Okay,
I
well,
wear
maybe
boots,
we
I
could
wear a
both
cowboy hat,
not
but I'm
play
not
the
a country
guitar together. Yeah.
singer. We'll learn.
Uh,
I'm in.
Yeah, that's right. But I think you're right, because I think when I was sort of a bit younger, like a thousand years ago, and when dinosaurs roamed the earth, that people were a lot less flexible. Whereas I think people are really requiring a lot of flexibility. If you can give them flexibility, like working from home or just getting them to be able to do their, see their kids, maybe, pick up their kids and stuff like that. I think that really adds a lot, and it kind of empowers people because, the last thing people want is, to be someone's penny pinching and also being so rigid that, they don't realize that the people actually have a life outside of work as well, don't they?
Sure. I agree 100% with that statement.
Yes, so it's kind of interesting, and I think also at the same time, so long as you're getting productivity and people realize that they have to still do the work they need to do, then it's a win-win, isn't it? And obviously then people need enough money to live, and they're being paid fairly, but I think it's really those intangible things which really keep people there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So anyway, thanks again for joining me today, Chris. I mean, you're in Texas, aren't you?
No, no, I'm in Colorado. We've got some of
Okay.
our team in Texas. We've got some of our team in Colorado. And then we've got other members kind of spread out, but Colorado's our headquarters.
Right, fantastic. And we really appreciate your expertise on ERTC and just your insights on, the big issues around childcare, especially around staff retention and hiring. And and just it's just been great to have a chat with you. And for the listeners, thank you again for just joining us on the inaugural Excellence in Childcare podcast. So hopefully you can understand me coming from having this Asian guy, this geeky Asian guy talking in this thick New Zealand accent. One fun fact about Chris is that he used to play rugby when he was at college. Is that right?
Not me. It was Brian's kid that played rugby at college.
I thought it was you that
Brian,
played rugby.
no, it wasn't me that played rugby. I was a water polo player. I was a
Oh,
All-American
what
water
the
polo
hell?
player.
Well, if I
It
knew
was
that, I probably
close.
wouldn't have had you on the podcast now. So,
No, no,
but
you and
hey,
I
we've
talked
already
about.
recorded it.
I
Yeah.
studied the All Blacks in high school,
Oh,
and
there you go.
yeah, I was a fan of their training and their rituality, and their
Right.
mentality, and just their overall story of everything they've had to achieve.
Okay,
Very
okay.
admirable.
Then you basically pedaled back, and you're a bit higher in my self-esteem, and
Did I recover a little bit?
yeah, you recovered a bit, mate. Yeah, that's all right. That's all good.
Oh,
So thanks a
fantastic.
lot again, and
Well,
sorry, carry
I
on,
want
Chris.
to say thank you for being a solid partner for us. I know that done a lot of work with one place. Samantha on our team is really working hard to utilize some of your guys' checklists to build, an easier renewal process for around all of our insurance, around all of our compliance that we're offering to our clients as well. So the things that you guys are doing for some of the centers that we've seen out there, it's phenomenal. And so thank you for being being one of our partners and inviting me onto this. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, well, as I say, you're the best guest we've ever had on this podcast in North America. So, congratulations for that. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to wrap this up now. So, thanks everyone, and I'll catch up with you guys later. Bye.
Awesome. Thank you. Bye bye.